probably a little bit more kind of progressive than the last debate we had in here about 11 years ago in relation to kind of similar issue. Some of the views I completely disagree with. The issue around which always really annoyed me is that cannabis is a gateway to harder drugs. Absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. The gateway to harder drugs, which we're talking about in this instance, heroin, is not cannabis. It's poverty, alienation, and serious trauma. And alcohol, you know, has a lot to answer for in this country. It's a legal drug. I can walk out, literally out them 2 doors and into 2 bars that are that serve alcohol, and they will serve alcohol as much as I want. Alcohol kills 4 people a day in this country, 5% of all deaths. Now, if we go down the road of making alcohol illegal, if you think the drug wars were bad, wait till the alcohol wars come in. You'll wait and see what it will put the drugs wars into the halfpenny place. I mean, I find it incredible by Deputy Healy-Rae that he says that, you know, that cannabis is a gateway drug. He owns a pub, right? He owns a pub, right? Here, that's, you know, that is a substance. It's a psychoactive substance that, you know, most people do drink in this country. Most people don't have problematic use, but there are people that have problematic use with alcohol and they die. And there's, you know, a terrible issue around that. Just, Minister, just in relation to some of the terminology you've used about undermining the Citizens' Assembly, being premature, being disrespectful. I don't know who writes this stuff, but we've been waiting for 6 decades for this debate. Now, things have moved on. I'm not sure have you moved on. Public opinion has, I think, moved much more kind of progressive in relation to this issue. They're not hung up about kind of the old tropes of stigmatization and the kind of, you know, the kind of just the rhetoric that can be used against people that use drugs. And most people that use drugs don't have problematic use in relation to their use. Some people do. We all acknowledge that, and people that have problematic use in relation to should get treatment as soon as possible. There is a huge kind of shortage of treatment beds in this country, and you know, when people get treatment, you know, the outcomes are very, very, very good. In relation to the proliferation of drugs, since the 1970s, the availability of all sorts of drugs has increased. Now, you can't police your way out of a situation of the proliferation of drugs. It's just not possible. And other kind of jurisdictions across the world have said this is absolutely impossible. The amount of resources that go into trying to stop drugs, you know, is, you know, it's largely kind of a waste of resources. So other jurisdictions, particularly in South America, now have said, look at all the resources that go into to preventing drugs, not only in, well, you know, what happens in their countries, but obviously into Europe and the United States, it simply just doesn't work. So they're looking at different models in relation to decriminalisation and regulation, and that's very, very important. Just in relation to the Medical Cannabis Access Programme, and in 2019, the Misuse of Drugs Act was changed, was amended in relation to those that can get access to medical cannabis. Less than 100 people have got access. That's some via licence and some via the Medical Cannabis Access Programme. And kind of the irony at the end of some of it in this particular issue is that some people that have got a licence for medical cannabis actually have more than 7 grams on their person. In some cases, well, obviously there's the multiples of that if they're on a licence in relation to the medical cannabis. So they're lawfully allowed to have cannabis on them if they have a prescription, but if you don't have a prescription, you can be prosecuted. So there's huge kind of discrepancies in relation to that and in relation to the legislation that we're talking about. Finally, Minister, you know, my life experience from growing up in Clondalkin, and I seen the terrible dark side to addiction, terrible dark side to addiction. What happens to the individual and what happens to communities and what happens to society as a whole in relation to, you know, there is a dark side to drugs. There's no, I mean, we all acknowledge that. But my life experience says that continually criminalising people, continually putting people in prison, continually wasting vast resources in containment, into jailing people, bringing people through the criminal justice system, doesn't work. Doesn't work. So you have to look at different models in relation to how you go about of changing course. And one of the models is decriminalisation. And decriminalisation, just to be clear, is decriminalising the person rather than the drugs. Now, I think that's a good model, but it doesn't go, to me, it doesn't actually go far enough. There is kind of the shortcomings in relation to decriminalisation. Even in Portugal, it's not a perfect panacea by any means. Nothing is a perfect panacea, but something is better than letting people die, and that's what's happening in relation to drug-related deaths. So we have to change course. And to change course, we need to change our mindset and we need to change our laws. Because if we don't change the laws, Minister, it's lip service. And I've no doubt that there is elements in this government that are happy enough with the status quo. In fact, they probably want to even go more medieval than they've done before. I mean, the Green Party, I don't know where they are today, they support, they have quite a progressive policy around cannabis and kind of around drug policy. But they're going to be voting against this bill. I mean, they've sold their soul for the last 4 years, completely sold their soul. And there's some very, very good people in the Green Party in relation to a lot of issues that we've discussed over in the lifetime of this government. So, Minister, it's disappointing, but considering the Citizens' Assembly's recommendations, it's unequivocal, just to say that again, it's unequivocal what the Citizens' Assembly chair has said. He said, there is no time to waste. We need to change course and change how people are dealt with in relation to drug use in Ireland. And that means legislative change. Because if you don't change the legislation, we're going to be in the same room in 10 years' time, probably talking about the same issues and same problems. So something's got to change. And where there's a will, there's a way. So that's the most important thing, Minister. And I think a lot of people that are listening and kind of, I suppose, viewing this debate, they may have different opinions maybe a number of years ago in relation to this. And they probably have changed. Now, some people have probably changed to the opposite side, saying, look, you know, lock people up and do all sorts. But I'm of the firm view that the majority in this people in this country have moved on. And they want to see things change in this country in relation to legislative change and in relation to harm reduction. So in that sense, Minister, as a public representative for the last 8.5 years in here, I think it's just disappointing to see, you know, the same rhetoric, the same lip service paid to this issue. So hopefully, and I think you're on the wrong side of history in relation to this, and in the lifetime of this government, you have a chance in relation to this Special Oireachtas Committee to make the changes. But the jury is out in relation to that. Thank you.